and let us all do we can to build a better future. Story will be clipped, but the YouTube guidelines are becoming very suspicious and weird. Now, during the pandemic, yes, that is the thing that happened, YouTube. You couldn't talk about it. But now, so many things are being brought to light in regards to how it was handled, how both the Republican administration under Trump and this Democratic administration under Biden misled the American people. Many people have been severely impacted and are forever scarred by the policies being implemented by our politicians in regards to the pandemic. Small businesses have been shut down. Many Americans have been evicted from their homes and apartments. Americans are still struggling with the aftermath of these devastating decisions. And the thing is, we have to talk about, well, where did this all begin? Now, Tulsi Gabbard is calling out Dr. Fauci as he has been laughing off the lab leak theory. Now, again, folks, I wish things were handled differently in 2020. Many people's lives were forever impacted by it. And many of these politicians have been living lavish lifestyles. Hell, even after 2020, many of our great U.S. lawmakers in the House and Senate were making killings, financial killings in the stock market, doing insider trading and so much more. That's right. From 2020 to 2021 to even good old 2022, these politicians were doing great, all the while implementing policies that, well, changed the lives of so many of us. So I want to pull this video up. Shout out to Case Study QB. Be sure to follow him on Twitter. He's doing some fantastic work. Case, I don't know how you're sitting through corporate media, but you're made out of stronger stuff than me, my friend. Follow him. He does great work. He also has his own YouTube and Odyssey page as well.
There is a number of experiments that need to be done on viruses. How are you going to know whether or not they're capable of infecting humans unless you examine them? Rand Paul was insidiously throwing into his little questions that the work that was done in the Wuhan lab, funded by a small grant from NIH, a strong implication that that created a virus that made COVID. It would be molecularly impossible for them to turn it into SARS-CoV-2. They were so different. It's kind of like you have a Chevrolet and you got a motorcycle. And you say, I want to make that Chevrolet into the motorcycle. No matter what you do to that Chevrolet, you're not going to make it into a motorcycle.
What? He also claims he never flip-flopped and wishes he'd ordered masking sooner and quarantines. And he clearly hates...
Which none of them really worked. You know, let's face it, all it did was cause more fear and panic. And look, folks, the fact that, again, he's able to have a platform and not be challenged by our own, I guess, keen-eyed eagles in Washington, D.C., because let's face it, none of these politicians have a backbone. Many of these policies in 2020, in the beginning, damaged us. And we have yet to know the full long-term impact. But surprise, surprise, and spoiler alert, I would call it the Great Depression 2.0. That's right around the corner.
Rand Paul, but the Kentucky Republican senator firing right back. Watch.
The people of America should realize that the people saying it didn't come from a lab are self-interested. Tony Fauci approved and gave the money to the lab in Wuhan. So by approving that, he has and shares some culpability in the origins of this virus. So he's always going to deny that it came from the lab because it comes back to his reputation.
Of course it does. And Fauci, as you saw, painted the roadmap for how you manipulate a virus to make it more transmissible. No one was saying that they took virus A and changed it completely into virus XXY. What they're saying is the virus was manipulated through the research that Dr. Fauci funded. Of course, he retired in December, but how much of our COVID failures were his fault? Here to break it down, former Hawaii Congresswoman and Fox News contributor, Tulsi Gabbard. Welcome back, Tulsi.
Thanks, Kennedy.
So how much responsibility does Anthony Fauci bear for what has happened, the fallout from COVID, either in terms of the virus manipulation itself or the draconian lockdowns that have altered and ruined so many lives?
I mean, there's no question that he bears serious responsibility with this pandemic. But first, let's just set the stage so that we're all on the same page. Fauci is not a legitimate scientist. His so-called science is tainted by two very specific things. Number one is his political bias that came through in everything that he said and the decisions that he made. And number two, and maybe even more importantly, is his own selfish interest in trying to cover his own butt and run away from that responsibility that he carries. Where we stand now, what Congress should be focused on is preventing another pandemic. And so we know two things. Number one, this thing, the COVID either came from a wet market, or more likely, as all signs are pointing to, it came from a lab leak that was conducting this dangerous gain of function research. Now, Congress can and must take action immediately to do two things. Number one, stop all funding, stop all U.S. funding for this dangerous gain of function research, whether it's occurring here in the United States or in any other part of the world or other research.
How can we all forget that on, again, Stephen Colbert's show, where, you know, Stephen Colbert, you know, again, everyone's favorite late night comedian, everyone's best buddy in the whole wide world, Stephen Colbert, and had Jon Stewart on his show. And even when Jon Stewart was talking about how the virus was from a lab, Stephen was quick to silence and dismiss him and quiet him and try and play music over him. Notice how the conversation has changed now. I'm waiting for the day when corporate media finally collapses on its own weight. And when these politicians no longer have their little crutch to lean on, so that their narrative of lying to us will be at their disposal. Hopefully that will break. And, you know, I always say to my audience, you have the arduous task of waking people up. Good luck to all of us, because so many Americans have been successfully brainwashed by the two-party system and corporate media.
Like it, that could result in another pandemic. And number two, work with other countries, pressure other countries like China and Vietnam and Thailand and others that have these wet markets to get rid of them. This is the action that Congress should be focused on taking, rather than political grandstanding, in order to protect the best interests of the American people and prevent another pandemic like this from occurring.
One of the things that will keep that from happening is Xi Jinping is personally and politically very invested in traditional Chinese medicine, and a lot of the cures come from wet markets like that. And you know, part of it is, I'm going to say science loosely. Another big part is soup.
All right, hey, let's also be positive to people's images. Lana X writes, she got them Twi'lek tails on her head, bro. You talk about Tulsi's hair? Frank says she's wearing Rick Moranis' helmet from Spaceballs. Folks, let's be positive here. Body positivity. Come on, folks. Let's be nice here. Let's all be friends. My audience is acting brutal. What's wrong with all of you in the chat?
Superstition, but he is so personally invested in that I think he is going to preserve any avenue to move traditional Chinese medicine forward. So that's problematic. Also, I don't know if China has been appropriately shamed for whatever reason. Are you confident that we will not see another pandemic like this in our lifetime?
We can only know that we will not see another pandemic. I think, first of all, no one can guarantee that, but I think this is exactly why our leaders here in the United States must be focused on taking action to prevent another pandemic like it. And there are very specific actions just based on the information that we already know today to be able to do that. We've heard Rand Paul, he has tried over and over again to try to expose this gain of function research that is funded by the United States here and around the world. But people in Congress on both parties are not actually interested in stopping it. Otherwise, they would have taken action now. So my point is, hey, put your words into action, stop the political grandstanding, and actually do something and take action that we know will be effective in preventing something like this from happening again.
Yeah, if not to save the world, then please at least to save more Americans.
So we were ill prepared. And the thing is, due to our politicians and their failed policies, what did they do? Did they decide to protect us, do any kind of debt jubilee, make Medicare for all happen? I mean, hell, Bernie Sanders in 2020, if there was ever a situation, if there were gods in the sky and they tailor-made a situation for your message of Medicare for all, that was your lightning in the bottle moment, Bernie. But then again, what did our politicians do? Oh, no, what they did was make sure that people stayed home, keep on paying their bills, no debt jubilee, no debt forgiveness, no stimulus check. Well, to be fair, Trump wanted to give us more stimulus checks in his remaining months of president, but good old hagbag Nancy Pelosi, what did she decide to do? Oh, she was against it. Why? Because did she want to give us more money? No, because she felt that Trump's stimulus checks for those next couple of months would have helped him. So she wanted to hurt Trump. Look, that $1,300 that one time we got from Trump, it might not have been a lot, but it clearly meant it would mean the world to a lot of Americans. And that never happened. We could thank our so kind and compassionate Democratic lawmakers like Nancy Pelosi, Nancy Ice Cream, Nancy Pelosi, denying it. So are we prepared for a pandemic? No. Are our politicians going to do anything to protect us during a pandemic? No. How they acted in 2020 is how they're going to continue to act towards us. We already told you that our politicians are abandoning us. Hell, they were doing that before 2020, and they did it again, and they're continuing to do so. And the only time they come crawling back to us is when they need money and our votes.